Joining us now from Dubai is Citigroup's chief economist for Middle East Research, Farouk Soussa. Farouk, welcome to InBusiness. A comment that you made recently at a conference in the Middle East grabbed a lot of attention, and that is you think that the risk of Yemen becoming a failed state is more of a worry for oil than perhaps the other unrest that we've been tracking so closely.
Yeah, I think that certainly there are reasonable concerns regarding oil, but ultimately the oil facilities and production facilities particularly in Saudi Arabia, but also elsewhere in the region, are very safe. They're very heavily secured. They're dispersed over a very large area. So street protests don't really factor into oil production. What's less safe is oil supply routes, and in particular, I think the key risk there is Yemen. Yemen sits obviously on the Straits of Aden. Ships going into the Straits of Aden already have a menace of piracy with Somalia to their left, a failed state in Yemen, and the possibility of terrorism and sabotage that would follow such a failed state would be a major risk to shipping routes and shipping lanes going through the Red Sea.
Yeah, let's put up, I believe we have a map of this just to make clear to our viewers, because Yemen isn't a country that much on the map, to be quite frank with you, and outside of the Mideast because of the lack of investment there. But it is such a neighbor to Saudi Arabia, and that Gulf of Aden area that you're talking about is filled with piracy. So how are you, we don't have that map, but trust us on the geography being an issue here. But Farouk, explain to me why you think that the Gulf of Aden doesn't have the kind of protection that perhaps other oil thoroughfares do.
Well, the Gulf is already filled with Navy fleets from around the world trying to protect against the menace of piracy. Now, I have to remember that Somali pirates have been a concern for the shipping industry and for shipping routes through the Gulf of Aden for a long time. Already, shipments are being diverted around the Cape in Africa and through other routes, costing the industry billions of dollars yearly. Now, the real threat is if lawlessness and a failed state is allowed to emerge in the Yemen, the government forces will be unable to control elements within Yemen, such as Al-Qaeda, who are looking to further disrupt flows. We have to remember that for all the flaws of the Saleh regime in Yemen, it has been a significant partner to the United States and to the West in terms of suppressing terrorism within its borders.
Well, we mentioned that blast that happened today that's being blamed on Al-Qaeda. How close to being a failed state is Yemen?
Frankly, there's been a debate over whether or not Yemen is already a failed state for a number of years. Where we are now, though, really puts the country in a position of crisis. The future is very uncertain. The transition to any future regime looks highly uncertain. And the risk really is a descent into civil war where large swathes of the country, the territory, are not under control of the law enforcement authorities.
And I'm sure you're trying to model for any kind of disruption here, but we already have seen Saudi Arabia in past years intervene to a certain extent in Yemeni affairs to try to keep issues from flowing over their border. Would you expect Saudi intervention, and would that in any way help cap the price of oil gains?
It's very difficult to tell. The intervention that we've seen in the past with Saudi Arabia has been really to do with issues along the northern border with the Houthi tribe along the northern border that have run incursions into Saudi Arabia, and therefore Saudi incursions into Yemen or action in Yemen has been really more of a defensive type operation. Currently, the crisis is really an internal affair of the Yemeni government. At this point, we do not expect to see any Saudi intervention.
All right, Farouk, thank you very much for giving us your analysis.